Okay, what's up, good people? David Taub here, coming to you from nextlevelguitar.com. Tim Gilberg's in the house tonight.
Advanced lesson.
And
You wanted it.
you asked for it, you got it. We are going to talk a little bit more about lead guitar and a little bit about playing over certain chord changes, okay? Now, on our website, we have a jam track, and the chords in this track are D major 7th to B minor 7th to an E minor 7th to an A 7th, okay? 4 chords. We'll start with something simple and build from there, okay? So you're going to want to do 2 things. One, you want to go to the website, to the main taskbar, to Jam Tracks. Click on that, and then you'll see a jam track that's in the key of D major with these chords, and you're going to want to download that and save it to your computer, and then you'll have this track. It's a rhythm track of guitar, bass, drums, just playing that, and you're going to give you, you're going to apply some lead guitar technique and practice that, okay? That's one thing. The other thing you want to do is you want to go to the written lesson section of the site and download this document that has the D major playing over each chord. It'll have written depictions of the chords and also some arpeggios that we're going to talk about and some different things that you can try, all right? So you want to download the written lesson, download the jam track, and the audio lesson, and man, then you have it smoked because you can practice with the audio jam track, see the shapes and the chords on the written lesson, and then watch this video lesson, and you're there. All right.
Bada boom.
Bada bing, bada boom, you got a meatloaf. Okay, so I would have hoped before you've gotten to this lesson you watched some of the previous lessons on soloing and improvisation. And you know that it's so important, your 2 choices when you're going to solo over a progression, over a chords, or over a chord, that you have 2 options. One, you can solo over what relates to all. That means no matter what chord is being played, if you have 4 chords, like this is a 4-chord progression, or if you have 8 or whatever, the whole chord string, what relates to all, you're playing the same scale or the same mode over all the chords. That's one option. We're going to talk about that here. But I want to get you to the level where you can treat each chord like a separate event. That's going to give you a much more sophisticated sound, and you could do a lot more things, okay? And watch that lesson where I talk about that earlier on in this section, and you'll learn about soloing over all the chords or soloing independently over each chord. What I'm talking about when I'm talking about as a separate event is over the D major 7th chord, we might play a D major 7th arpeggio or maybe the D Lydian mode, but when the chord change goes to the next chord, the B minor 7th, what we're going to do is we're going to abandon that D major 7th arpeggio or that D Lydian mode, and we're going to play something that'll relate to this B minor 7th chord. Maybe we'll play a B minor 7 arpeggio, or maybe we'll play in B Aeolian, or maybe B minor pentatonic, okay? And then when it goes to the next chord, E minor 7th, we're going to abandon the B minor work, and we're going to switch and play in the key of E minor. Maybe we'll play E minor pentatonic, or E minor 7 arpeggio, or maybe we'll do some E Dorian, or things that relate to a minor 7th chord, you see? And that's what's called treating each chord like a separate event. And that's going to be significantly harder to do if you're just new at this, because you got to have one ear on the band or one ear on the progression. And when that chord changes, you have to change what you're doing, okay? And you have to time it right. So this is a significantly harder technique of lead guitar, but if you want to push yourself to the next level, this is perfect. It's a nice slow progression, and if you go and download the written lesson, there's also a link there where you can hear me playing over that, an audio link, and you can hear, because I'm moving over the chord, so you can hear that. And the progression is pretty simple. It's very slow, just a D major 7th chord, then you go to that B minor 7, to an E minor 7th, to an A 7. And on the progression, I'm playing at about this speed with a nice little minor 7 to the A 7. So it's slow, so you have a good 2 measures on each chord. You see, if you have a progression and the progression's moving really, really quickly, like bada bing, bada boom, each chord, you're not going to have time to solo over each chord. That makes sense, right? You have to kind of solo over all of them, okay? With the same scale, the same mode, all right? So when you're looking to solo and improvise, you have to have a mindset, and I'm teaching you this real methodical way of going about what can I play over what. That's one of the most common questions we get here with advanced or intermediate students are like, how do I know what to play over what? And how do I use it? Well, you have to study the scales and study the modes and find out what relates to what chords. And we're teaching you that here. So when you go to solo over something, you could be like, okay, when I first started, what really helped me when I really started to work on practicing over tracks is write the track out, write the chords out, okay? And really methodically analyze it. Find out what key you're in, and then look at each chord independently and decide what to solo over, and you have a column for each. And I'm going to take you through that right now on the whiteboard. And it might sound like a lot of work, but at first, if you do it this way, it's going to get you into this training, and pretty soon you'll be able to do it on the fly. Like I could pretty much do it on the fly. And I've been playing a long time, so my ear lots of times will take me to those hip notes or hip scales, hip arpeggios. But I put my time in the woodshed of writing everything out, really getting good at playing over each chord, and it takes a little while, but you can do it. You've gotten this far, right? Why not go to the next level beyond that? Okay? So real quickly, the first thing you have to determine at first is a good idea is to know what key you're playing in, right? Here, very clearly, we're in the key of D major, okay? D major 7th, B minor 7th, E minor 7th, A 7th. Now, if that's new to you, like how do I know what key, visit our lessons on theory, on key signature, and on knowing the chords in each key. All these chords, B minor 7th, E minor 7th, or A 7th, are made up of the notes in the D major scale. As well as if you listen to that progression, the D major 7th, everything seems to be pulling to the D. Right, when I get down, watch out now when I get to the A. Now listen how it resolves. See how that A resolves? That A really, D really feels like home. And a lot of times you could tell what key you're in. What's really home base? What is everything pulling toward? Okay? And usually there's a theoretical explanation for it. Here, all these chords are made up of the notes in the D major 7th chord, or in the scale, in a D major scale. And that D major chord is really sounds like home. Clearly this is in the key of D major. So you want to really figure out that first, because what you could do as your first option is you can play what relates to all. In this instance, you could play your D major scales, we're in the key of D major, over all these chords. You could just solo using all the shapes that I've taught you, and that's in the intermediate section in the key of D major. And that's a good idea, okay, because that will get you and link together your scales and play your scales. And in fact, listen to that jam track of me playing over, and you'll hear me playing some D major scales. And you want to practice them, okay? Now, because this is a jazzier progression with major 7th chords, you can use the full D major scales. You can also use D major pentatonic, because as you know, major pentatonic D is made up of 5 notes of the major scale. So if you know you can use the major scale, which has 7 notes, of course you can use the major pentatonic scale. All right, so key of D major relates to all. So the first thing you could do is, after writing these chords down, is, okay, I know I'm in the key of D major, and I'm going to play some D major scales at first. To establish the key of D, I'm really going to emphasize the D notes, okay, as well as emphasizing some of the notes in these other chords, the strong chord tones, you know, the roots, the flat 7s, the 3rds, the 5ths, really strong tones, much stronger than the 4ths or the 6s, okay, and try your D major scales over everything. And that's one option. You're going to play what relates to all. Now, get good at that. Practice that. And then once you are really comfortable with your scales and putting licks together like we talked about, and creating melody lines in your playing, then you want to start looking at each chord individually. And you're probably doing that by now if you reach this lesson. And you want to start picking things that you can play over each chord and then jumping from one to the next in a fluid manner. You just don't want to play it's important that, like I always say, you want to mix your scales, your modes, and your arpeggios and mix them together. You just don't want to play something, stop, play something totally unrelated, just to say, oh, I'm playing over the chords. It has to make good musical sense.